Boom. We're live, ladies and gentlemen. It's a beautiful Saturday morning here in Costa Rica. I want to thank you guys all for joining us this wonderful morning, maybe evening. I don't know where you are in the world. We hope you're having a great time. We're going to be taking a look at the charts just for some general sentiments. So let's hold on. Let's pause myself talking in the background. Just some general sentiments. We're going to take a look at the fact that BCASH did a 51% attack on its own transaction chain because they wanted to roll back some transactions that they didn't like. Again, just proving that BTrash is exactly what we thought it was, centralized and fairly manipulated. Hats off to Roger Ver for that one, proving that BTC is the one and only Bitcoin king. With that in mind, let's do. Boom. Oh, look at this. I actually have Matic open on the screen. So hats off to all the Bear family members who took such a crazy ride on Matic. There are some massive waves coming in from the background. All of those of you who are in the private Bear Den, you were loving, and I know we all were noticing some of the similarities of what was taking place on the back end for some of these big trading places. Now, we're working on that as the investment thesis for part of our second newsletter and working on the private newsletter now. I do want to dive into Bitcoin's charts though, because Matic is not actually what I intended to have up. So we'll just switch over here. Right now, I currently have Bitcoin on the hourly chart. And as you can see, there is an ascending triangle. Now, there's two possibilities here. One of them was the ABC retracement, which seems to have denied itself that possibility. So I'll remove that. And then it turned into this ascending triangle. Now, normally, I would like to see an ascending triangle with a little bit more upwards momentum. And as you can see, we actually have a little bit of a decline on Bitcoin. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean a whole lot. Ascending and descending triangles are not... Pattern charting isn't always the best way to go. It doesn't give you a definitive answer for what's going to happen when things break out. It just shows you that when things break out, they're going to move very strongly in any direction. Now, ascending and descending triangles are usually continuation patterns of the current trend that they're in. Now, this is a kind of an awkward position because, again, remember, none of these patterns play out exactly the way we would think. They're just means to make sure that we're watching. Now, every time you get close to the edge of the triangle, you're looking for a breakout or a breakdown. Now, for the potentials on the breakout, it's pretty easy to see that $9,400 and $9,500 is it would be the next little jump out kind of gesture. Again, part of I think the real curiosity in a lot of people's minds now is, again, I'm still not 100% convinced that we've entered a bull market. And again, the reason I play like that is because I like to be risk off. I'm risk averse. That's one of the reasons why I live in the jungle. Well, that doesn't really make any sense, does it? You live in the jungle, you don't like risk? It doesn't. Are you high? So maybe I'm not saying that correctly, but the point here is I like to play by looking at both possibilities, right? That means I don't just want to think, oh, look how high it could extend. It could just keep going forever. Again, in our long-term projections, we feel like Bitcoin is going to go to millions of dollars. That's inevitable, or zero. Now, both of those cases is an asymmetrical bet, because if it goes to zero, well, who cares? If it goes to 1 million, well, that's awesome. It means we saw the social experiment that we were interested in take place and explode. Now, there's a lot of resistance here. Now, the fact that we found so much resistance at the $8,000 as in comparison with the $6,000 area that we thought we would actually see resistance at was quite contrary to what a lot of old-timey traders would have suspected. It didn't make a whole lot of sense. Aside from the fact when we look at these markets, we do know that they're full of a lot of irrationally exuberant people. You can tell this by the conversations, the comments that are all over the crypto space, and kind of the abstract behavior that comes from that. Now, generally, anyone that's done well in business knows that if you're good, you don't just get one opportunity to do well in life, you get many. So a lot of people that speak like, oh my God, you missed the bottom of Bitcoin, it doesn't really speak to the intelligence level of the highly qualified, successful individuals that I've been able to sit down and speak with. That's not what they sound like when they talk, and that's also not what they believe either. They're looking for, again, a very similar idea that I am, which is a risk-assessed situation. So with the risk-assessed situation, we know that the bottom potential was around $1,200. And again, that didn't make any difference to us because our original sentiments where this could go to zero. So even though we have a lot of support down here at the $1,000 range, the asymmetrical bet was either 0 or 1,000,000. So whether it was 1,000 or 2,000 or 3,000, we've stated multiple times it didn't really matter. It's just part of your way to find a strategy. Now the reason I feel like I have to go over and over and over and over this again is because people get caught too much up in the hype cycle of anything that's taking place. Now again, there looks like there's the upside potential for us to jump to around 9,650 to 9,200 before we see any real resistance on this side again. But there's a lot of signals that are pushing us in, pushing us downwards to some degree. Here we see a rising RSI, a rising price with a falling RSI. Not much though, which is actually which is a nice thing to see. On the top of our MACD, we actually see again a declining, a declining crossover here since the 12th of May. Essentially, we've been declining. Haven't broken above this yet, but we're going to try to likely on the daily. Again, breaking out here on around 84.44 is where I have my initial breakout pattern taking place because of the volume profile, not the triangle itself. Again, could to lead to $9,400 to $9,500. Now, what's of real interest to me here isn't necessarily Bitcoin's price. It's actually about the other undervalued assets, in my opinion. So for instance, we've been taking a look at Digibyte for the last few weeks, and there are a few of the tokens that we have in our investment thesis had all bumped up around 40%. Here we go. We saw Digibyte do that. We saw Raven do that. These all sit in our 40% jump on Raven, and then a retracement back down the other 30%. Now, the reason we were looking for this on Raven is because we'd seen it before. We had seen this almost identical 40% bounce. So about a week before that happened, all the private Bear Den members have been getting not our calls, but basically the information that we're looking at, which is we saw Raven break below the 200 moving average. Now, while Bitcoin was staying relatively stagnant at the $8,000 area, this represented massive potential for gains. Now, again, for those of you that are in the private Bear Den, we were looking at things like fetch.ai, and there's some really interesting stuff that was going on in the private conversations about that. I'll leave them private because they're quite lucrative if you're paying attention. But here, Fetch is another great example of this very short-term, highly speculative bounce. 80% on Fetch. We saw another one called TNT as well as Matic that came out that had very, very large movements. Now, these are all risk-on assets. I would never touch anything like this for more than an hour or two. It just seems very, very dangerous. But even with TNT, we were on the phone with one of our Bear family administrators, and we caught this little spike up, right? So I was looking just for bounces off the mid-range of the bear claw and this bear flag that this bullish flag that we had been building, and there was, hold on, look at this spike off the top of this flag, and there was enough liquidity in here to actually get out. Excuse me. I watched it run all the way up to here around 800 Satoshis, and if you look at it on the minute channel, it's just absolutely absurd to see the volatility that's taking place in the background, because if you're a good trader, and by a good trader I mean someone who's able to risk exposure on and off very, very quickly without having their stomach turn sick and just take losses every step of the way, we saw the bounce off of this trend line in TNT for almost, I think it was almost 110% gain. And if you look at it here on the minute chart, it's absolutely absurd to have to really take in. Look at this. One second, I gotta stop casting my screen here. Okay. So on the minute chart, take a look at this. Look at this. These candles on the minute. So the candle here on the minute of TNT was up 19% alone, and it broke down in a matter of seconds. It ran up and ran down in a matter of seconds, really. It was almost 30 seconds to a minute to go right back down. So we saw so much volatility in this that if you are a good kind of speculative day trader, there was an 80% run here where between the morning of the 22nd of May to the evening of the 22nd of May, 100% potential of gain. And again, the bounce off this trend line multiple times was just absolutely absurd. Now, these are all risk-on trades. I don't suggest anyone who's new in any space like this ever touch anything like this, because generally most people in this space have the hodler mentality. They're like, oh, I'm going to buy TNT. Look at it. It's going up in price. But look, as soon as we started to break that trend that we were in, let's look at it here on the 1 hour, this thing started to collapse in price quite quickly. We saw the same thing with Matic from its high, Fetch as well, Seller, and a few others. What was really noticeable is that the downfall of this could be, it's almost as bad as having leveraged trades, because you can get not wiped out, but you definitely are losing big chunks of a portfolio. So anyone that is interested in this space at all, first off, do not play without a stop loss, because here, if you were sitting on TNT for an overnight in hopes that it would have gone up here for 12%, you're now down 24%. So these are all highly risky plays, yet if you are good at looking for the signs and signals of I guess essentially where and when to get out of these things, there's so much momentum coming into here. So again, if we look back at Matic, Matic had just been released. There's the Phoenix Red Pulse coin too that did something similar. But here from the top of Matic's little run up from 521, we've now dropped down to 42%. Now I'm actually really interested here to see, look at this. Matic on the 1 hour is actually about to break above the bear claw. We could see a nice little bounce, probably up to around 377 Satoshis. Again, from here to there, that would represent a 16% move. This is not huge, but this is a highly risky play that could pay off well for those that know how to do day trades and have the portfolio to actually withstand a storm. Again, looking at the downside here to the bottom layer of the of our bear claws EMAs, you've got a potential for a 25% loss as well on the 1 hour. So it's pretty much evenly keeled in upside direction now. It's 20% up to 25% down. It's not really worth it as a risk play unless you're watching this thing on the minute. And then if you are a day trader of any kind, really you spend all your day right in front of the computer. It's impossible to walk away from these things unless you're playing with really tight stop losses. And even then, what I've come to notice is that we really start to dislike Binance, because where the hell are my trailing profit and stop loss buttons? The fact that Binance is running around trying to do all these things that really have nothing to do with the core business model that made it successful to the first place is quite worrying. All they needed to do was be a good exchange, and now they're failing at that. It really makes me start to think that there's going to be big boy players that step into this game and just kind of leave Binance in the dust. You're supposed to be a trading platform, Binance. Get your shit together. If you can't stay up to date, you're continually copying trading views, APIs and plugins, there's going to be someone that comes and takes you guys out. And I was talking with a really good friend, and it's pretty easy to speculate that over the next few years, most of the exchanges that we have today will not exist. The regulatory standards that are going to come out that are going to give the big boys the go-ahead to play have the money to remove companies like Binance overnight, because they don't have small liquidity pools. Binance has done amazing things for us. I really like what they've done. But unless they start refocusing on their core business model, they're really starting to lose my attention, and that's kind of depressing, because I was just starting to like Binance. Now again, you see the Binance token is doing quite well, but again, this is a highly speculative play. The area of decentralized exchanges with low fees could very easily come in and squash some of these players. So I've got a really close eye on anything that's taking place in these markets right now, especially with what exchange I'm trading on, because I don't really trust them in the long term. Any of them. Consistently, the weakest part of the Bitcoin space has been the exchanges. And when, I really wish Binance would refocus back on their primary business model, which was creating something that was good for the traders. And they did that at first. They integrated TradingView, and that was an amazing thing, because Bittrex at the time had nothing that was useful in terms of really charting or trading in screen. And you need that speed and efficiency when you're in the middle of a trade. Anyways, I'll move on from this idea a little bit. I'll take a look at Litecoin and Ethereum as well. I know these are big followers for a lot of the bear family. We'll take a look here. Litecoin on the daily had bounced off of the bottom of the bear claws moving average. So for those of you that are new to the bear family, if you're new to the channel and you want to follow along the way we like to, you can go to tradingview.com. You can find us by typing in Arcane Bear, and you can actually download the bear claw indicators. We keep those under our scripts. We do post here as well. So keep an eye on that. If we make anything, please remember to give us a like and a follow on TradingView here as well, as we're going to be posting more and more on TradingView than instead of Twitter, because the stuff I post on Twitter just doesn't seem to work, mostly because I'm not very good at Twitter. Anyways, we'll stay active on Twitter. But nonetheless, look at this, already 77 likes in the Bear Claw. Jump in there, download it, give it a shot. It's a great little tool. I really like using it. But see, as we saw, perfect bounce off the EMA of the Bear Claw for a nice 20% gain. This happened all the while we were looking at Digibyte too, right? So Digibyte, instead of a 20% gain, brought in a 40% gain. Now, this one is actually probably the most interesting in my current thesis because of its previous all-time highs. First off, if you look back here to when it first dropped out, we were sitting at almost 10,000 Satoshis. If you take from the bottom of the channel today to that, that's 35,000%. That's just absolutely absurd. Also, if you take a look at right when we started Arcane Bear, we didn't know much about Digibyte. We actually started looking at it right here. We did make some good gains with it, but nothing like what we saw back in March 2017 when we first started the channel for 10,000%. So currently, from Digibyte's price to the top of the candle on the weekly close, that's 1,200% in an upwards direction. So even though Digibyte has been on a long-term downtrend, that's what you want. Every Moonboy Lambo kid is looking for things that are in an uptrend, but really the smart thing to do, the visionary thing to do, is look for something that's an undervalued asset that's been in a long-term downtrend, that's been consolidating, and now starting to face up. And that's exactly what we see with Digibyte and a few others on the daily. Now, we're in a little bit of a precarious position on the daily here because we could come back down. Again, barring whatever the hell happens in Bitcoin, it's a very interesting topic. But just like Digibyte and Raven, as soon as we hit this exponential moving average of the Bear Claw, almost with what I would call some form of synergy and synchronicity, Raven, Digibyte, Flow, Dash all bounced off those areas. Now again, every one of these is a little bit different in terms of the way they bounce off that area and what particular portion of the chart they bounced. But nonetheless, it's very interesting to watch. So here we are with Flow on the daily, and we saw Flow actually have a quick spike up and then a quick spike back down of around 40%. Now, Flow or Florin token here is one of these tokens that fit very, very soundly in our thesis, and it looks like we're likely coming down to retest the EMA of the Bear Claw at around 1084. I'm in a type of accumulation for these undervalued assets as time moves on, but again, my main focus will and always has been what's Bitcoin doing. From there, I very, very quickly reallocate my portfolio depending on what's going on, because again, 40 to 50% gains in 24 hours is nothing to be scoffed at. And if you're going to leave value on the table, you might as well go do something else. Anyways, I'm going to keep it short. I'm going to take a look at a few of your guys' thoughts and questions today. If you're interested, please sign up to our private Bear newsletter. We have a fantastic community of traders in the background that are always ahead of the curve. We've got some great new ideas coming out for you over the next month or two. 2 different theses which have been very powerful up to this date. So I'm excited to release both of those, although one of them is significantly riskier than the other. Not for the faint of heart or for the light of the pocketbook, but nonetheless, we're going to include it because the private Bear members love these types of ideas. It's $30 a month to sign up for that. It comes with, we do a new chapter every month or every 2 weeks on trading. We've got the newsletter, deep dives, a community forum. I do notes and chart updates. Like for instance, on Raven, they're not a call, but I basically showed, okay, I'm entering here at around 580. 560, 590, and then boom, I'm exiting here at 780, 790, and I think we spiked all the way up to what here, 832. So we exited mostly on the volume of the candle around 790, 780 here. But again, that represented in a very short period of time around a 30% gain. So again, it's really interesting. The private Bear Den has been such a fascinating place to take part of. There's so many brilliant people in there. I'm grateful myself to be a part of that space because again, I'm just one of the brilliant people. Well, hold on. I'm just one of the people in that space that helps hold it together. Without all the community members, it really wouldn't be the place it is. So hats off to all the Arcane Bear admins. And one quick last look at Matic as we broke out of the Bear Claw here. It looks like we're going to continue to pump up for a short period of time. Again, these are all heavily risk-adjusted trades, or they should be, but there's potentials there. As long as you are tight with your stop losses and your profit takes and you know how to not hodl, there's value to be taken off the table every which way but loose. And also for those of you that have been watching PHB, which is the Phoenix Red Pulse now on the Binance coin. I'll take a quick look at that because I know a bunch of you had pulled off almost 100% in the last 24 hours on that one as well. We'll just take a quick look on the hour here. We saw yesterday in the mid of the day, it spiked up almost in the 20-30%. Having just come off another previous run up from the Phoenix Red Pulse coin, we saw almost 100% gain for those of you that had entered in PHX. Now that was a very risky play as PHX did go offline. You had to switch over to the Binance coin. You were essentially locked into that play. So for those of you that did it, I commend you for being so brave. I myself did not move any positions in that particular play, but I definitely did see some of you in the private bear den able to basically take value from that. I'm going to take a look at one or two of your guys' questions. We'll end off on a light note with whatever you guys might be asking. So again, remember to give us those thumbs up. I really appreciate all the support. Every time you give us a thumbs up, it helps other people later on down the stream find the information that they are looking for. So let's take a look. Nathaniel says I'm riding BNB for a while. Yeah, BNB's, they've got a lot. They've been, I don't want to say anything too particular, but we'll just keep a close eye on anything. Oh yeah, and the last news we want to look at was BCASH's 51% attack. You can find that on Coinbase. I'm kind of running out of steam. I have some other things I need to do this morning, so I'll just make sure I focus on questions. So the question was, do you think BCASH will go down in price because of the news of the attack? It's hard to say. I don't think a lot of people will notice the news right off the get-go, but it generally should lose some of its value. The fact that it wasn't necessarily an attack. They attacked their own chain because they didn't like what happened. Again, this is one of the big pitfalls that happen in Ethereum, and it just goes to prove that it doesn't fall inside of the decentralized notoriety that Roger Ver has claimed it to be. Again, it's just a kind of a trash. Let's see more of your guys' questions. Everyone's always bashing BCASH, yet it's always one of the top performers. No, it's not always one of the top performers, as a matter of fact. It's just in the top 10, so it's easier for most people to see. Top performers are almost never in the top 10 in term because low liquidity pool tokens can shoot up in price hundreds and hundreds of percent, just like we saw with Matic in a very short period of time. Again, if you look at Matic on the last few, what is this, a week? We can time it out here from the bottom of the last flip in the bear claw to 914% in 11 days. Yeah, BCASH does not keep up with that. So let's keep our minds clear when we say things like top performers. It's a top performer in the top 10, but those are all overhyped, and Roger Ver has done a great job of confusing people about what Bitcoin is by selling BCASH instead. Now, again, I'm actually a fan of any Bitcoin fork to some degree because I think they're all versions of Bitcoin. It depends what people can basically get how they can accrue adoption through their token use is really up to the community. So I'm not betting against them, but I'm definitely not betting on them. Thank you guys for all your support. You're going to ask me to look at a few more of the tokens. If you guys are interested, I will be online again live tomorrow. We could go over more of the things that might be interesting you. I'm just trying to catch up a little bit. I had a long day yesterday. It was a very, very beautiful day for me as well. Oh, the Ethereum chart, right. Thank you for reminding me. I actually did not go over that. So just really quickly, I will look at Ethereum versus Bitcoin. Here we saw this nice spike. We saw a bear flag, although we've dipped below the moving average on the bear claw right now. Represented a 31% move versus Bitcoin's from the 13th all the way up till the 16th. So again, a 7% day. Oh, you guys are asking also for theta too. So, okay, I'll give you another few minutes here. So Ethereum is actually looking a little bit weak. I suspect we'll probably test this bottom, the bottom EMA here. That would put us around 3 million Satoshis. We did actually hit that 3.4 million Satoshis that we looked at, but didn't hit the further extensions of 4.2 that was possible. Again, Bitcoin's kind of, we'll call it Bitcoin solidarity, would be, has been keeping everything kind of in check. I'm all risk on, risk off in terms of adjustments. So I don't just buy and hold any of these alternative assets. I look for downtrends and I try to get out of as close to the top. And even anywhere, if you get into this middle range here through the breakout of the EMA to the close of our cloud here, you're still talking 16 to 20%, which is monumental in terms of trading space. The last one you guys wanted me to take a look at was theta. Theta versus Bitcoin. Again, you can see we're in a long downtrend consolidation. We saw a nice spike up here from the 14th of May. represented a 40% gain, lost most of that game, had a quick spike back up. It's having troubles getting out of this particular area. There's a lot of resistance right here at the, what is this, 1700 Satoshi mark. If it can break out of there with volume, I'd be interested to see. But again, we see a look at this. This oversold spike, it was actually more than the oversold areas we hit with this nice growth and development here. When I see spikes like this, it's a little disconcerting. It means there's probably one or two people that have been going around in the background with Binance and just chucking money in. We get, again, for those of you that are the private Bear Den member, you already know what I'm talking about with that thesis. Is we've looked at multiple tokens that were making gains and losses almost in lockstep. It seems very likely that there's a little bit of self-fellatio taking place at the Binance headquarters. But hey, I guess that's how the games go. What the future holds for those things, I'm not entirely sure. Thank you guys all for joining us. We hope you have a wonderful day. This is Tio and the Arcane Bear. Thank you all for joining us. We'll see you guys on the next episode.